Having learned that I was admitted into the nation's top university, I felt not the slightest joy. Instead, I asked my teacher to hide my admission letter, because in my previous life, the very first thing I did was share this great news with my parents. Yet they demanded that I give up the spot to my foster brother, Makoto. My fiancée, Sophia, even urged me to stay behind and marry her early, using love as her excuse. The result of my compromise was that I remained in a small city, accomplishing nothing, and eventually died in depression. Meanwhile, my foster brother entered the country's most prestigious university, smoothly became a diplomat, and flaunted his success side by side with my fiancée. After my death, my parents even persuaded my wife to remarry Makoto. In this life, when they tried to convince me again, I agreed with a smile and handed them the forged admission letter I had prepared. Since they wanted to act, I would play along to the very end. Chapter 1, 1982, Sea City High School. I carried the admission letter from Tsinghua University and knocked on the door of the homeroom teacher's office. Teacher Mao, could I trouble you to keep this for me for a while? I'll come get it before I leave for City A. Teacher Mao was taken aback for a moment. Then his face broke into a broad smile. He received the weighty letter. His eyes filled with relief and pride as he looked at me. Of course, no problem. George, hard work truly pays off. Congratulations. He paused, then couldn't help but ask, but this is such wonderful news. Why don't you take it home and let your family, and your fiancé, share the joy? My fingers tightened slightly, my gaze lowering. A bitter ache spread from my chest, seeping into every limb. They won't be happy for me. I knew that better than anyone. In my previous life, I had rushed home with this very admission letter, almost flying with excitement. I truly believed they would be proud of me, as happy as I was. But what greeted me was not joy, but a crushing blow. Sophia, the girl who had been by my side since childhood, my betrothed, spoke first, asking to marry early. She said she didn't want to be separated by thousands of miles, that she was willing to let me stay behind, and promised that even if I had no diploma, she would never let me suffer. My parents, in turn, tried to persuade me to give the admission letter to my foster brother Makoto, who had failed the entrance exam. Their excuse sounded righteous. The family could only afford to support one child in City A, and Makoto was more suited for that path, while I, staying by their side, was the best choice. Hesitation, struggle, pain. In the end, I gave in. And so, Makoto took the admission letter that should have been mine, stepped through the gates of Tsinghua, and later entered the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, becoming a diplomat admired by all. And Sophia, she applied to become Makoto's personal security, never leaving his side again. As for me, the husband in name only, I was left alone with an empty house. Loneliness, desolation, depression devoured me little by little. Even when I was gravely ill and close to death, she still stayed beside Makoto, never once looking back at me. After death, my restless soul drifted to her side. I personally witnessed her reaction to the news of my passing, her face calm, as she said simply, "I know," as if I had never been her husband, just a stranger utterly unrelated to her. And my parents, barely 3 days after my death, they began persuading her to remarry, to become Makoto's wife. At that moment, I finally understood. My life had been nothing but a cruel joke. I had handed my future to others, only to earn half a lifetime of misery. Family, love, I gained nothing. Even the name, George, in the eyes of others, belonged to Makoto. This time, I only want to firmly hold onto the admission letter that belongs to me, and fulfill my dream of becoming a diplomat. Teacher Mao froze for a moment, but in the end only patted my shoulder and solemnly promised, "Don't worry, except for yourself. I will not give this letter to anyone." I bowed, suppressing the stormy emotions inside. After leaving the office, I rode my old bicycle all the way back to the compound. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Makoto sitting in the room, pounding his head, eyes red and brimming with tears. "It's all my fault for not working hard enough. I didn't get into university. What will I do with my future?" My mother rushed to comfort him with aching tenderness, wiping away his tears. My father sighed beside them, while Sophia suddenly stood up and grabbed my wrist. Her tone was commanding, leaving no room for refusal. "George, you should give your admission letter to Makoto." I was stunned, not even having time to reply before her attitude softened abruptly, her voice turning almost into a plea. "If you go to university, we'll be separated for a long time. I can't bear that. If you give the admission letter to Makoto, we can get married right away, and then we'll be together every day." Her nails dug deeply into my skin, sharp pain shooting up my wrist. When I pulled away forcefully, 5 bright red marks were already imprinted there. Sophia frowned. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just anxious." My parents exchanged a glance, then spoke in unison to support her. "George, you're already engaged to Sophia Kim. Even if you don't go to university, it doesn't matter. Besides, you are our biological son. Both the Wang family and the Kim family will be your support. But Makoto is different. He's just a foster child. His real parents died long ago. Without a diploma, people will only look down on him even more. In my previous life, it was under such so-called persuasion, the three of them echoing one another, that I softened and gave away my admission letter. And what did I gain in return? Sophia clung to Makoto's side, applying again and again for reassignment so she could guard him with her life. My parents moved to City A under the excuse of taking care of Makoto, leaving me alone for nearly 20 years of loneliness. Looking back now, those persuasions were nothing but lies. How laughable that I once thought Sophia truly couldn't bear to part from me, or that my parents were merely pitying Makoto. Utterly ridiculous. I lowered my eyes, my chest already frozen over with cold indifference. All right, I spoke calmly, my tone flat and without a trace of emotion. I am willing to give the admission letter to Makoto. As I said this, I drew out the forged admission letter I had prepared in advance and slowly handed it over. Since they wanted to act, I would play along to the very end. Chapter 2. Peking University was the school I had earned with countless nights of studying by lamplight. Becoming a diplomat had been my dream for 2 lifetimes. This time, I would not use my effort and sweat to pave the road for Makoto's glory. The room fell silent. Even Makoto, who had been leaning in my mother's arms, secretly watching my expression, froze. Sophia's gaze fixed on the admission letter with a complex look. She asked, You really are just giving up the chance to attend university to Makoto?" I lowered my eyes, my lips curving in a mocking smile. In my previous life, I had been reluctant, delaying my answer, so she whispered in my ear day after day, alternating between pleading and pressure, until I finally gave in. But now, when I agreed without hesitation, she instead faltered, "What's wrong? Isn't this exactly what you wanted to hear from me?" My tone was faint. "If you've changed your mind, then I'll just go to university myself." As I spoke, I deliberately moved as if to take the admission letter back. "No." Makoto lunged forward, snatching the letter from my hands and clutching it tightly to his chest, greed flashing in his eyes. My mother immediately shielded him, blocking the letter as if terrified I might take it back. "George, I knew you were a sensible boy. Since you've agreed to give it to your brother, you can't go back on your word." Makoto glanced at Sophia, a trace of unwillingness in his eyes, but still bit his lip and said softly, "Mom, this admission letter is nothing compared to marrying Sophia. I'm sure my brother won't change his mind." At his words, Sophia's hesitation dissolved, replaced by sudden clarity. Of course, in her eyes, my greatest dream had always been becoming her husband. What was university compared to that? As long as I could marry her, I, George, would naturally give up everything. Her brows relaxed, lips curved in a smile, as if making a confident declaration. Makoto is right. George giving up the admission letter is truly the best choice for everyone. Shall we open it and see which university it is? Makoto tore the envelope open impatiently, bursting with delight. Wow, it's USTC. Clutching the fake admission letter, he beamed at me. "Brother, thank you. I'm already looking forward to registration day." In my past life, he had said the same, his gratitude hiding the knife behind his smile. And I had been so foolish as to sincerely entrust him with my dream of diplomacy. This time, I only smiled faintly. "So am I. I'm looking forward to it too. Looking forward to personally reporting to Peking University myself." Sophia clearly misunderstood, assuming I was genuinely happy for Makoto, and for once showed me a hint of tenderness. "George, now that Makoto's admission is settled, let's go register our marriage." My father and mother immediately chimed in, pushing me and Sophia toward the door in a hurry, afraid I might change my mind and take the letter back. Before I could respond, we hadn't even left the compound long when footsteps came from behind. Makoto jogged up, wrapping an arm around my shoulder with a smile. Inwardly, I sneered. The show had only just begun. "Brother, I want to go with you too. You won't mind if I tag along when you and Sophia register, will you?" he asked cautiously, but his eyes betrayed irrepressible excitement. I was silent for a moment, then shook my head. "I don't mind," because I had absolutely no intention of registering with Sophia. A lifetime of an empty marriage had been more than enough. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, Sophia picked up the form and quickly signed her name, then handed me the pen with a smile. "George, I've signed already. As soon as you write your name, we'll be officially husband and wife." My fingers tightened slightly, but I did not move. I was still thinking of an excuse to refuse when suddenly, Makoto sneezed. Sophia's expression instantly shifted to worry. She set down the form at once, took off her army green coat, and draped it gently over Makoto's shoulders. "Did you catch a chill? Here, put on my coat." The tenderness in her expression was that of a devoted wife caring for her husband. For a moment, I felt dazed. I remembered, in my past life, not long after we married, I once saw her uniform jacket lying casually on a chair. I reached out, intending to hang it up for her, but the moment my fingers brushed the fabric, she snatched it away coldly. A military uniform is sacred. It cannot be touched casually. Back then, I had even blamed myself for being thoughtless, but now I understood. It wasn't that the uniform couldn't be touched. It was that she had never allowed me to touch her true tenderness. "Comrade, are you still filling out this marriage application?" The staff member looked up, eyes carrying a trace of complexity and sympathy. I snapped back to reality, my gaze falling on the two figures before me, looking for all the world like lovers in the throes of passion. The corner of my lips curved upward as I picked up the form. Yes, fill it out. The pen danced across the paper as I boldly signed a name. Makoto. Chapter 3. After carefully checking, the clerk stamped the marriage certificate with a heavy red seal. I lowered my head, my fingertips slowly tracing those two glaring names, Makoto, Sophia. The corners of my lips curved into a silent smile. Sophia, in this lifetime, I will personally fulfill your wish with Makoto. I closed the two marriage certificates and handed them to her. She raised her brows in mild surprise. You're not keeping one for yourself? I shook my head. No, it wasn't my marriage. It wasn't my certificate. What meaning would it have in my hands? Sophia thought nothing of it, assuming I only did it for convenience. She casually slipped both certificates into her pocket, not even bothering to glance at them. On the way out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, she fussed over Makoto nonstop, tightening the coat draped over his shoulders, her eyes brimming with concern, and I walked behind them, like an irrelevant stranger. When we passed a photo studio, Makoto tugged at Sophia's sleeve, his eyes pitiful. Sophia, I've never taken a photo before. Will you come with me? Without hesitation, her voice gentle, she said, of course. I watched them walk into the studio together, standing shoulder to shoulder before the red backdrop. Makoto's eyes curved with a bright smile, and Sophia's usually cold, aloof face overflowed with tenderness. The sight stung my eyes. In my past life, until the day I died, I never had even a single photo with her. Every time I asked, she would reply coldly, I don't like photos, rejecting me outright. But now I understood. It wasn't that she disliked the camera. She only disliked facing the camera with me. When they came out with the photo in hand, chatting and laughing, Sophia suddenly seemed to remember something. She hesitated before speaking. Today is the day we registered our marriage. Why don't we take a photo too? I froze for a moment, then chuckled softly and shook my head. No need. Fate was truly mocking. What I could never obtain in my previous life, no matter how humbly I begged, even to the grave, was now offered to me so easily in this second chance. But this time, I no longer wanted it. As soon as I spoke, Makoto looked at me with reddened eyes, his voice trembling like a sob. Brother, are you angry that Sophia and I took a photo? I really just wanted to experience what it's like. I didn't mean anything else. Before I could reply, Sophia's face darkened. She stood in front of him protectively. Makoto is your brother, and I'm family with him too. It was just a photo. Can't you even tolerate that much? I lowered my head, my lips twisting into a bitter smile. In her eyes, George, didn't even deserve a place in a single photograph. My fists clenched tight, the knuckles turning white. Again, I hadn't even spoken a harsh word, yet simply because of Makoto's casual complaint, Sophia instantly blamed me without question. A pang of bitterness spread through my chest. I took a deep breath, forcing down the surge of emotions. Just about to explain, I didn't. Before I could finish, a sudden cry of alarm rose behind me. Instinctively, I turned my head, only to see a jeep spinning out of control, barreling straight toward us. Watch out. Sophia reacted the fastest. She instantly pulled Makoto into her arms, retreating quickly, and I, too slow to dodge, was struck hard, thrown to the ground by the impact of the vehicle. Crack. Agonizing pain shot up from my ankle, spreading through my entire body. I could almost hear the sound of bones grinding out of place. My lips were bitten nearly to the point of bleeding, and with difficulty I forced out a breath from my throat. Sophia. But what answered me was her anxious voice. Makoto, are you hurt? I struggled to lift my head, only to see her carefully examining Makoto, terrified that he might have even the slightest scratch. Makoto, pale with fright, clutched her with trembling sobs. No. I'm just so scared. The car almost. Sophia gently patted his back, soothing him softly. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let you suffer even the tiniest harm. That scene overlapped with a memory, stabbing painfully into my heart. When I was a child and nearly drowned, it was she who leapt into the river without hesitation to save me. She had once solemnly promised me, George, I won't let you suffer even the tiniest harm. But now, she had long since forgotten those words. And yet, she repeated the very same vow for another man. I forced back the sting in my eyes, enduring the searing pain in my ankle as I slowly pushed myself up. Only then did she spare me a glance, her brows knitting slightly. Why didn't you dodge? I pressed my lips together without answering. Dodge? I was just an ordinary man, not a soldier, not a hero. How could I possibly avoid a car speeding straight toward me? She seemed to realize she had spoken too harshly. Her gaze lingered on my swollen ankle, and after a moment of hesitation, she spoke again. Forget it. I'll take you to the hospital. But just as she reached out her hand, Makoto's tear-filled eyes tugged at her sleeve, his voice trembling. Sophia. I know my brother is hurt, but I'm really scared. What if another car loses control? Those light words froze her in place. I saw her waver between me and Makoto, then she made her choice. I'll take Makoto home first. Wait here for me. With that, she shielded Makoto and left without looking back. I stared at their receding figures. My heart clenched tight as though a giant hand had crushed it. So that was it. No matter how severe my injury, it could never outweigh a single word of fear from Makoto. I lowered my head, the corner of my lips twisting upward, bitterly. I did not stay there waiting for her, because I knew she would never return. At the clinic, the nurse crouched at my side, carefully applying medicine to my ankle. She frowned and reminded me, although the bone isn't fractured, you should walk as little as possible. It's best to have your family come pick you up. I lowered my eyes, my fingers unconsciously tightening. Family, huh? After a long silence, I rasped out hoarsely, could I borrow your phone? The nurse agreed, and I used the clinic's phone to call home. The line rang more than 10 times before someone finally picked up. Mom, Before I could finish, my mother's anxious voice cut me off. George, how could your brother almost get hit by a car? Wasn't he with you? As his older brother, how could you not protect him? He was so scared he nearly cried. From the receiver, I could faintly hear my father scolding as well. What kind of brother are you? At a critical moment, you're not even as attentive as Sophia. Your younger brother went through such a dangerous ordeal, and you were nowhere to be seen. My grip on the receiver tightened until my knuckles nearly turned white. In their tone, there was only concern for Makoto and blame for me. No one asked if I was hurt. No one cared why I hadn't gone home with them. In my past life or this one, I never understood. I was their biological son. Why did they give all their love and protection to a foster child? Makoto was the orphan of my father's comrade in arms. Ever since he was taken into the Wang household, I was told, your brother lost his parents. He's pitiful. You must give way to him. From then on, clothes, snacks, toys, everything went to Makoto first. I only got what was left. And in the end, even my parents' love leaned entirely toward him. All I received was the occasional, fleeting scrap of pity. Why aren't you saying anything? Hurry back. Makoto still, my mother's voice continued urging in my ear. I closed my eyes. After a long silence, I slowly hung up the phone. Beep, the busy tone rang out. At that moment, I severed the last shred of longing I had for them. Lowering my head, I looked at my ankle. Layers of gauze wrapped tightly around it, and a bleak self-mockery surged in my chest. After one lifetime already, I should have long understood. In their eyes, they only ever had one son, Makoto, never me. The nurse, seeing I had finished my call, couldn't help but ask, young man, when are your family coming to pick you up? I was silent for a moment, then spoke so softly it was nearly inaudible. I don't have a family. That was Makoto's family, not mine. Chapter 4. The nurse kindly handed me a crutch. I thanked her and hobbled out of the clinic alone. When I returned home and pushed open the door, my mother immediately rushed up, her voice full of reproach. Makoto went through such a big scare. How could you only just? Her words abruptly cut off. Her eyes fell on my ankle, tightly wrapped in layers of gauze. She froze, her lips trembling. I didn't know you were hurt too, child. Why didn't you say something on the phone earlier? I looked at her quietly, my heart an empty void. It wasn't that she hadn't heard me speak. It was that she had never intended to listen. I wanted to say it, but you and Dad never gave me the chance. In your eyes, there's only Makoto. The moment the words left my mouth, the fleeting guilt in her eyes hadn't even settled when my father's temper flared. Are you blaming your mother and me? Makoto lost his parents so young. What's wrong with us caring for him more? Their voices pounded in my ears again and again. Even now, with my ankle swathed in thick gauze, cold sweat still drying on my skin, not a single word of concern for me. Makoto may have lost his parents, but I, who still had parents, lived as if I had none. I tugged at the corner of my lips, unwilling to argue anymore. Supporting myself on the crutch, I turned and went back to my room. As I passed Makoto's bedroom, I saw Sophia seated at his bedside, her voice soft, her eyes full of comfort. She had promised to come back for me, yet I had waited at the clinic for half an hour, and she never appeared. That one glance was enough. I withdrew my gaze and quietly returned to my own room. The days that followed, I stayed inside to heal. Only when the swelling in my ankle subsided and I could walk again did I take the crutch back to the clinic. After leaving the clinic, I turned a corner and went straight to the police station. I had taken my documents from home in secret, all for this day. That place was no longer my home. If that was the case, then once I entered university, there would be no reason to return. The household registration transfer went surprisingly smoothly. When I finally held the relocation certificate in my hands, my heart settled at last. After the semester began, I would be able to leave completely and live the new life that belonged to me. On the way home, sunlight bathed my body, warm and comforting. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt light and unburdened. George. A familiar voice sounded from behind. I turned and saw it was my homeroom teacher. Teacher Mao. I was just about to head to your house. Didn't expect to bump into you here. Teacher Mao. He held an envelope in his hand, smiling as he pressed it into my arms. This is the scholarship from the school for students admitted to Peking University. You must keep it safe. I froze for a moment, then looked down at the heavy envelope in my hands. I hadn't heard there would be scholarships before the exam. Teacher Mao patted my shoulder, speaking earnestly. It's a new edition, meant to encourage students to keep striving after entering university. George, I believe in you. Don't let me down. My nose stung, and I could only nod firmly. At least, there was still someone who truly saw my efforts. In my previous life, I had actually handed over my hard-won place at Peking University to Makoto, not only betraying my own struggle, but also failing the expectations of Teacher Mao. Thankfully, in this life, I had seized the chance. I nodded heavily, making a firm promise to Teacher Mao. Teacher, once I enter Peking University, I will study diligently and fulfill my dream. He patted my shoulder, his eyes filled with relief, and carefully reminded me of many things I should pay attention to at university. Even after he left, I was still clutching the envelope in my palm, clearly feeling the warmth radiating from it. All the way home, I gripped it tightly. For the first time, I truly felt that my future was held firmly in my own hands. When I got back, I planned to carefully hide the scholarship money at the bottom of my suitcase. But just as I passed through the living room, my father's harsh voice barked out, "Stop, Makoto's pocket watch is missing. Do you know where it is?" I froze, baffled. How would I know where his things are? The next second, Makoto rushed out of his room, his eyes red as he clutched tightly at my sleeve, his voice choked with sobs. "Brother, we've searched the whole house, but it's nowhere. That watch was the only keepsake left by my parents. It has our family photo inside. I can't lose it." I looked around the room. My father and mother made no move to intervene, only stared at me coldly. Sophia stood silently off to the side, her gaze heavy as it settled on me. In that instant, I understood. They all believed I had stolen the watch. A rush of absurdity and bitter irony welled up in my chest. "You all think I took his pocket watch?" My father slammed the table with a thunderous crack, his roar making my eardrums buzz. "We searched everywhere in the house and found nothing. You were the only one not home today. If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" My mother's voice was softer, but her words cut even deeper. "George, that pocket watch means a lot to your brother. Hurry and give it back to him." I clenched the envelope in my hand until my knuckles turned white. At that moment, the silent Sophia finally spoke. Her tone was calm, yet like a sharp blade. "Then let Makoto search you." In that instant, what rose in my heart wasn't anger, it was searing humiliation. Their eyes held no hesitation, as though I truly were some petty thief. I hadn't taken it. Why should I let Makoto search me like a criminal? I yanked my arm free, my gaze sweeping across their suspicious faces, a chill sinking into my chest. I already said I didn't take his watch, and I won't let him search me. With that, I no longer looked at their expressions and turned toward my room. "Brother, that watch means the world to me." Makoto hurriedly grabbed my sleeve again. In the struggle, an envelope slipped from my hand to the floor, revealing a neat stack of bills inside. Chapter 5. The room fell silent for a moment. Makoto was the first to react. With red eyes, he picked up the stack of money, his voice breaking. "Brother, I know you've never really liked me as your younger brother, but the pocket watch is the only keepsake my parents left me. How could you steal it and sell it?" I froze where I stood, my chest struck by a heavy blow. I hadn't expected the money to fall out. I didn't. "This money is," I hurried to explain, still trying to argue. Smack. My father's palm cracked across my face, whipping my head to the side. My ears rang, and the taste of blood filled my mouth instantly. His eyes blazed with fury as he glared at me, each word like a hammer. "You dared to steal and sell Makoto's parents' keepsake. How am I supposed to face my old comrade when I die?" I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and lifted my head. 3 pairs of eyes glared back at me, full of disappointment and anger, as if I were some heinous thief. Almost 20 years living under the same roof, and in the most crucial moment, not one of them believed me. The chill in my chest spread, layer upon layer, draining even my strength to speak. Yet I still forced out the words through clenched teeth. "Makoto has always carried the pocket watch on him. How could I possibly steal it? This money is the scholarship given by the school for getting into university. If you don't believe me, you can ask Teacher Mao." But the moment I finished, Sophia's gaze grew even colder. She looked at me as though I were a stranger, her voice sharp as ice. "Makoto's pocket watch disappears, and suddenly you have a stack of money. How could that be just a coincidence? We already registered our marriage, now you're part of the military family. You should be setting an example. I didn't expect you to not only steal, but also lie without shame." Her cold eyes cut into me like a trial. "If that's the case, I'll have to teach you a lesson, so you can reflect properly." Sophia ordered sternly, "Lock him in the confinement room." I was stunned, staring at her icy eyes. In my mind suddenly flashed the image from my past life, when she heard of my death, her indifferent, careless expression. In that instant, I finally understood. The figure who once swore in our youth to protect me for life had shattered into dust. I was thrown into the confinement room without mercy. Darkness pressed in from all sides, so dark I couldn't tell day from night. I curled into the corner, hugging myself tight. No food, no water, hunger, cold, humiliation, they gnawed away at my sanity, one layer at a time. I didn't know how long had passed before the door was finally opened. "The commander says you can leave now." Blinding sunlight stabbed into my eyes, forcing them shut. Only after a long while did I manage to adjust, dragging my weakened body step by step back home. Brother, I'm really sorry. Makoto hunched his shoulders, feigning fear of my anger. I found the pocket watch in the gap by my bed. We wronged you. Before I could speak, my father cut in first. What's there to apologize for? It did him good to spend some time in the confinement room, to temper his character. My mother's eyes flickered, not daring to meet mine. She only added, siding with him, George, your brother just lost the watch and panicked. As his elder brother, you should be more generous and not hold it against him. Each sentence pierced into my chest like a needle. Because of Makoto's false accusation, I had been locked away without food or water for an entire day. And when the truth finally came out, they tried to brush it aside with a few light words. As expected, even if I, their biological son, suffered the greatest injustice, I could never compare to the foster son they cherished in their palms. Otherwise, in my previous life, they wouldn't have been so quick to push Sophia to remarry Makoto the moment I drew my last breath. I sucked in a deep breath, forcing back the sting in my eyes. I'm not holding it against him. I just need to rest in my room. Pulling my arm away, I turned upstairs without looking at the surprised expressions of the three in the living room. After all, once the semester began, I would cut ties completely with this house, with these people. There was no need for any more meaningless arguments. Chapter 6. I returned to my room and lay down to rest. Half asleep, I dreamed of childhood scenes. Back then, my parents would still lift me high into the air, their eyes filled with affection and laughter, as if the whole world revolved around me. But the image vanished in an instant. They were holding Makoto's hands, one on each side, while the younger me trailed behind, stretching my arms desperately, yet never again touching that warmth that should have been mine. Their happy silhouettes together formed a gulf I could never cross. In the dream, I wept. A single tear slid from the corner of my eye and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, a knocking on the door woke me. When I opened it, it was Sophia. She held a cufflink in her hand, her gaze carrying an unusual trace of apology as she extended it toward me. I wronged you about the pocket watch. Don't be angry. I lowered my eyes to the cufflink, a bitter laugh rising inside. Some mistakes were no longer worth forgiving. Seeing me unmoved, she shoved the cufflink into my hands herself, speaking seriously. We've already registered our marriage. Once Makoto starts university, you can move into the Kim household. Don't worry, I'll take care of the family. You won't suffer. A sting pricked at my nose, pulling back memories of my previous life. She had said the same thing back then, and I had been foolish enough to believe it was her most sincere promise. But later, she fulfilled those words for Makoto instead. For him, she applied for transfer after transfer, following him across the country, sacrificing everything just to protect him. And me, I was left alone, depressed, until death. Fortunately, in this lifetime, she was legally Makoto's wife, and the one truly stepping into university was me. George. I pressed down the bitterness in my chest and answered casually, pretending as though nothing was amiss. I had not yet left the Wang household. I couldn't let them sense anything unusual. Sophia frowned slightly. Perhaps she found it strange. In the past, whenever she gave me something, I would smile as though it were a treasure. But today, my indifference left her unable to read me. George, you. Her words were cut off by a cheerful male voice. Sophia, how does it look? I looked up to see Makoto swinging his wrist, showing off a brand new Shanghai brand wristwatch. Noticing me, his eyes curved into a smile as he said brightly, Brother, you're here too. Look at this watch. Handsome, isn't it? Sophia gave it to me as a gift for starting university. He paused, his gaze flicking deliberately to the cufflink in my hand, a flash of smug provocation in his eyes. I really envy you, brother, for marrying such a good wife like Sophia. She even treats me, her brother-in-law, so well. I'm sure the gift she gave you must be even better, right? Inside, I sneered. Outwardly, I only gave him a light glance. No need to envy me. After all, you're the one who's her husband. Without another word, I turned and walked straight out the door. It was almost time to report to Peking University. I needed to hurry and buy a train ticket. On the way, I passed a garbage dump and tossed the cufflink in without hesitation. It was just an accessory, nothing more. I didn't need it. After standing in line for 4 full hours, I finally bought a ticket for the first train to City A 3 days later. I tucked it carefully into the innermost pocket of my clothes, and only then did I feel secure. Back home, I began packing. Other than a few necessary clothes, I didn't intend to take anything else. The things of the Wang household would stay with the Wang household. I was nearly finished when Makoto burst in from the gate, crying, with my father and mother flustered behind him, and Sophia pressing him with anxious questions. Makoto collapsed onto the table, his eyes swollen like walnuts, sobbing so hard he could barely breathe. Brother told others the admission letter was his. Now everyone is calling me a fraud who stole his place. I can't live with this shame. George, how dare you? My father shook with rage. Even my mother, who usually could spare me some patience, snapped in anger this time. You clearly promised to give the admission letter to Makoto. Why would you go tell others otherwise? Are you trying to drive your brother to his death? I froze on the spot, an icy chill seeping into my bones. I didn't. My hoarse voice was instantly drowned by their fury. Even knowing deep down that explaining was pointless, I still couldn't help but defend myself. But my father cut me off coldly. Do you think Makoto would risk his own reputation and future just to slander you? He raised his hand high, his gaze sharp, roaring. You must apologize to Makoto in front of everyone. Admit that you slandered him out of jealousy. Otherwise, I'll beat you to death. You unfilial son. I stood my ground stubbornly, silent. I kept telling myself, they've never truly loved you. Don't be sad. Don't expect anything. But my eyes still reddened uncontrollably. I hadn't done it. I would never admit to something I didn't do. Yet the slap I was bracing for never landed. A slender figure stepped in front of me. Sophia, my heart lurched, almost believing that this time, she was finally standing by my side. But the next second, her icy voice cut through the last thread of hope like a blade. Don't hit him. He's already injured. If people think we forced a confession out of him, it will damage Makoto's reputation. We need him to apologize willingly. In that instant, the tiny spark of warmth that had just flickered inside me was snuffed out. My heart froze over completely. I forced a bitter smile onto my lips, uglier than crying. I won't apologize. The moment the words fell, Makoto's tears flowed harder, his shoulders trembling. Sophia immediately bent down, tenderly wiping his tears, her tone full of pity and comfort. But when she raised her head to look at me again, her familiar face carried only coldness and unquestionable authority. If you don't apologize, I'll go straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau and file for divorce. She was certain that I would never let her go, because she knew, from childhood to now, my greatest wish had always been to marry her. My hands hung at my sides, fingers digging so hard into my palms that blood seeped out. But inside, I knew better than anyone, I couldn't let her go. If she went to the bureau, she would discover that the marriage certificate bore Makoto's name, and with her sharp instincts, she would trace it back and uncover that the admission letter was fake. I couldn't take that gamble. After a long, burning silence, my throat seared like fire. I forced out a few hoarse words. Fine, I'll apologize. And so, in front of the entire compound, I held a self-criticism letter in my hands. Like a criminal, I read out each word, admitting to a crime that never existed because I failed to get into university. I grew jealous of Makoto and spread false rumors. Neighbors gathered in small groups, their pointing fingers and judgmental stares stabbing into me like knives, stripping me bare. All I could do was lower my head and let the humiliation devour me bit by bit. So it was the Wong family's eldest son who slandered the younger one. I used to think George was a good kid. Turns out he not only failed his exams but also smeared his own brother. Wong family sure was right to adopt the younger son. He's promising. The elder one's useless, bad character, no degree. Each mocking voice pierced my ears like an awl, stabbing deep into my chest. I had never endured such humiliation. Their scornful gazes pinned me in place like countless sharp thorns. Veins bulged on my arms, yet I had no way out. All I could do was clutch the paper tighter and finish reading the last line. Here, I apologized to Makoto. The moment the words left my lips, something rotten hit my chest, a spoiled vegetable leaf. Then came rotten eggs, stones, raining down on me. Liar. Shameless. Numb. I stood there, letting the filth pelt me, darkness clouding my vision. My body froze in place until Sophia finally stepped forward, pulling me out of the crowd. But when her eyes landed on my disheveled state, her brows furrowed deeply, and she instinctively took a step back. If you hadn't told people about the admission letter, would any of this have happened? I let out a faint laugh, offering no explanation, because I knew explaining to her had never once mattered. Chapter 7. In the days that followed, I shut myself in my room. No more words, no more arguments. I simply waited in silence for the day of departure. On the day itself, the courtyard bustled with cheer. My father and mother rose early, busy helping Makoto pack his luggage, laughing as they chatted about the wonders of City A. Sophia even drove up in a jeep, her expression solemn as she came to assist. They gathered around Makoto, lively and full of joy, and I, alone in my room, quietly finishing the last of my packing. Only when they were ready to set off did they realize they hadn't seen me all morning. Sophia came to my door, knocking lightly, her brows furrowed. You're not coming with us to see Makoto off? I closed my suitcase, looked up at her, and smiled faintly. No, my train was leaving soon as well. She seemed to want to say more, but my father, mother, and Makoto were already urging her from the car. When I get back, I'll come fetch you to move into the Kim household. She left in a rush, never looking back. Naturally, she didn't hear my quiet reply. Sophia, in this lifetime, I am no longer your husband. I watched the jeep disappear at the end of the road, a strange lightness swelling in my chest, something I had never felt before. Back in my room, I spread out a large sheet of paper. Line by line, I wrote of how my father, my mother, and Sophia had forced me to give up my admission letter to Peking University. How they had forced me to admit to a crime that never existed. Each stroke was sharp, each word dripping with cold bitterness. When I finished, I pasted it squarely in the center of the compound's public notice board. I never expected them to regret it. I only wanted everyone to see what kind of torment their so-called sensible eldest son had truly endured at the hands of his own family. Afterward, I picked up my luggage and turned back for one last look at this place. A place that had wasted nearly 40 years of my 2 lifetimes. All for a woman who never loved me. All for parents whose bias had cut to the bone. I had sacrificed an entire lifetime, but in this life, I would walk my own path. I closed the door firmly and went to find Teacher Mao, personally reclaiming the admission letter to Peking University. As I walked toward the train station beneath the rising sun, my chest filled with a determination I had never known before. The whistle shrieked. I boarded the carriage, and the train slowly pulled away from the platform. This was the true beginning of what belonged to me. Elsewhere, at the University of Science and Technology's registration site, chaos erupted. Later, I heard how my father and mother had clutched that fake admission letter, sweating profusely as they pleaded with the staff. How could it be fake? George brought it back himself. We clearly remember it was real. And Makoto, standing beside them, sobbing so hard he could hardly breathe. But the staff could only shake their heads helplessly, holding up the forged document with a sigh. Comrade, this is counterfeit. It cannot be verified by the system. Only then did they finally realize. The letter itself had never been the problem. The problem was that it had never belonged to Makoto at all. As for my future, I had long since held it tightly in my own hands. My father's face was dark as iron. My mother flushed with embarrassment, and Sophia stood frozen on the spot. She had likely never imagined that I would deceive her. Makoto buried himself in her arms, choking through his sobs. If brother didn't want me to go to university, he could have just refused outright. Why would he make a fake admission letter just to humiliate me like this? Heh, what a perfect reversal of guilt. After confirming again and again that the admission letter was indeed a forgery, and seeing there was no way Makoto could enroll, my father and mother left in frustration. On the way back, my father's fury nearly boiled over. That unfilial son George, is he trying to drive me to my grave? Not only did he refuse to help his brother, but he also made us lose face like this. My mother joined in her complaints. Yes, we came all this way for nothing, only to find the admission letter was fake. He must have hidden the real one, planning to go to university himself. When I later heard this retold on the train, I could only find it bitterly ironic. Yes, I was going to university, but the admission letter had always been mine. When did it become me, hiding it away? Makoto, tearful and pitiful, had said, Dad, Mom, what about me? The neighbors all know I was admitted. If they find out the truth, that brother was the one who passed, I'll be drowned in their spit. The moment his tears fell, my parents softened instantly. Don't worry, Makoto, your father and I will never let anyone speak against you. That's right, no one will shame you. I'd fight with my life before I let my son be left without schooling. I could almost picture their doting faces at that moment. But how laughable. That son on their lips had never been me. I was the one who had passed Peking University. Their real, biological child. Yet in their eyes, I was the sinner. And Sophia, she was likely there too. Watching that scene, did she remember how only days earlier, she had stood by as rotten vegetables and stones rained down on me, saying not a single word in my defense? Back then, my father, my mother, even she, not one of them stepped forward to shield me. On the contrary, they were the ones who pushed me into that humiliation. But the truth remained, I was their flesh and blood. I was her childhood fiancé, the boy who had grown up by her side. Makoto was only an adopted child, merely a pitiful younger brother in her eyes. That thought left Sophia strangely unsettled, even flustered. She forced the unease down, pressing harder on the gas pedal. The jeep roared down the road, and by dusk, they returned to the compound. My father was the first out of the car, cursing under his breath. Today I'll teach that unfilial son a lesson, just a university, and he couldn't even give it up for his brother. Sophia pressed her lips together and followed behind. But as they reached my bedroom door, my father's voice suddenly cut short, like a chicken with its throat seized. George, you. His words strangled to silence. Sophia's heart lurched violently, and she pushed the door wide open. The room was empty. Not a trace of me remained. Even the clothes in the wardrobe were gone. Chapter 8. A sharp unease rose in Sophia's heart. Why wasn't George in his room? Could it be that he really had gone to report to university with the genuine admission letter, just like father and mother had said? But in the very next instant, she rejected the thought. George had grown up with her since childhood. They had spent nearly every day together, never apart for long. And besides, now they were already married. How could George possibly be willing to leave her behind and go to university alone? The thought made Sophia's eyes light up. Yes, they were married now. She still remembered what she had told him before leaving, that once she returned, she would bring him to move into the Kim household. Maybe he had simply packed his things in advance and moved there first. Without another moment's delay, Sophia ignored the calls of father, mother, and Makoto behind her. She hurriedly started up the jeep and drove straight toward the Kim residence. At the Kim house, she went first to the new room that had long been prepared, but but it was just as empty. The unease in her chest grew stronger. She turned back toward the Wong compound. But perhaps it was only her imagination. Why did she feel as if everyone in the compound was watching her with disdainful eyes? Frowning, Sophia returned to the Wong household. Even if George had truly gone to university, she didn't even know which one he had been admitted to. She could only ask the Wong family for clues. But the moment she stepped inside, she was met with Makoto's sobbing voice. How could brother do this? How am I supposed to face people ever again? Father's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, his chest heaving with rage. That unfilial son. Has he come to destroy this family? Mother sat quietly at one side, tears streaming down her cheeks. We just wanted Makoto to have a good future. Why does George insist on being against him? Sophia, bewildered, asked. Have you heard news of George? Father and mother exchanged glances, their expressions conflicted. In the end, it was Makoto who spoke, his voice thick with tears. Sophia, brother wrote everything down on a big character poster and pasted it on the compound's bulletin board. Sophia's heart clenched. She rushed to the bulletin board. The large character poster was written in a hand she knew all too well. Every line was neatly laid out, exposing all the truths in detail. People who saw Sophia's figure turned their disdainful gazes on her. So much for being his childhood fiancée. Looks more like she switched halfway and fell for the adopted son instead. Exactly. I always thought she cared too much for the Wong family's adopted boy, but I never dared say it aloud. Hearing the whispers all around, Sophia opened her mouth, wanting to deny it. She wanted to say, no. She had never liked Makoto. The only person she had ever loved was George. She cared for Makoto only because he had lost his parents so young. George still had his own parents. And her, his childhood fiancée, by his side. That was why she thought Makoto pitiful, and showed him a little more kindness. She had never imagined that in the eyes of others, her actions looked so improper. Improper enough to suggest she had shifted her affections, falling for Makoto. Then what about in George's eyes? Had he thought the same? Was that why he left without a word? But the mere thought of George vanishing from her world left her chest hollow, as if a piece of her heart had been carved out. She had never once imagined being apart from George. Sophia wandered aimlessly along the street, her mind in a haze. She wanted to find George, to explain everything to him, but she had no idea where he had gone. Even if he had taken his admission letter to report to university, she didn't know which school had accepted him. Suddenly, she caught sight of a familiar figure in the distance. Looking closely, wasn't that George's high school homeroom teacher, Mr. Mao? Mr. Mao, could you please tell me which university George was admitted to? Sophia tried to suppress the surge of emotion in her chest and asked politely. She had once picked George up at the school gate, so Mr. Mao remembered her, but she also clearly remembered the disappointment in George's eyes whenever he mentioned his family and his fiancée upon receiving his admission letter. Having lived nearly 50 years, how could Mr. Mao not recognize that something must have been done to hurt George deeply? Thus, his tone was frosty. George, he was admitted to Peking University. In fact, he's already gone to City A to report. I thought you were his fiancée, didn't he tell you? It had already been a full day and night since George left for City A. By now, he would have completed his registration. There was no longer any worry about anyone being able to stop him. Peking University, City A. Mr. Mao's words struck Sophia like a heavy hammer, leaving her frozen in place. She never imagined that George's university would be Peking University, thousands of miles away, and that he had already departed. Mr. Mao went on, not long ago. I even gave him the scholarship our school awards to students admitted to Peking University. Didn't he mention it to you? George had spoken about the scholarship, but at that time, Makoto's pocket watch had gone missing, and all of them had accused George of stealing it to sell for money. No one had believed his explanation. Not only that, she herself had ordered him to be locked in the confinement room. For the very first time, Sophia felt the crushing weight of regret. So George had endured so much injustice all along. Then, would he ever come back? No, we are already legally married. He has to come back. In a flash, Sophia thought of the marriage certificates and rushed toward the Kim residence. She had locked them away, along with other important documents, in the study safe. Her hand trembled as she opened it. When she saw the marriage certificates lying intact inside, she finally let out a long breath of relief. Clutching them to her chest like the last straw of salvation, she whispered to herself, George is just angry. He's still my husband. Once he calms down, I'll explain that I never had other feelings for Makoto. He'll forgive me. Her heart finally settled, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She opened the marriage certificate, and in the next instant, that smile froze. On the certificate, the groom's name was written in bold, Makoto. Chapter 9. Sophia checked the marriage certificate over and over, unable to believe her eyes, suspecting that someone must have swapped it with a fake, but the official steel seal of the Civil Affairs Bureau and the stamped date shone unmistakably across the page. It was indeed the certificate they had received on the day of registration. Her face turned deathly pale in an instant. How could this be possible? Why was Makoto's name on the marriage certificate? She clearly remembered George signing his name on the marriage application form. Then, like a flash of lightning, the memory struck her. At the moment George signed, she had been fussing over Makoto's cold, not paying attention to what George had actually written. Sophia staggered back a few steps, barely able to keep her footing. Her hand holding the marriage certificate trembled uncontrollably. Why had George signed Makoto's name on the certificate? He was the one engaged to her. Could it be, just because she, together with father and mother, had asked him to give up his university admission letter for Makoto? But she had only considered that Makoto had already lost his biological parents. Without a degree, his chances of finding a good job and starting a family would be almost impossible. George was different. He had his parents, and he had her, his childhood fiancée. Even if he had no diploma or career, she would still marry him and stay by his side. Why couldn't he understand that? Why had he pushed things so far, leaving home, and even writing Makoto's name on the marriage certificate? The thought left Sophia frustrated, but in the next moment, unease and panic overwhelmed everything else. Every one of George's actions screamed of his determination to cut ties with the Wong family, and with her. Did that mean he truly wasn't coming back? Just the idea that George might never return made Sophia's chest seize as though an iron fist had clamped around her heart. She couldn't breathe. No, she couldn't accept that. She would annul the marriage with Makoto and go to City A to find George. Having resolved this, Sophia turned immediately toward the Wong household. But before she could leave, Mother stumbled in, tear-streaked, clutching her hand. Sophia, quick, come with me, Makoto. Something's happened to him. In the past, the moment Sophia heard Makoto was in trouble, she would have rushed without hesitation. But today, staring at the woman whose lips spoke only Makoto's name, Sophia, for the very first time, did not move. Auntie, she said slowly, George has run away from home, and no one knows where he is. Why don't you show a little concern for him? Mother clearly hadn't expected Sophia to mention George at all. Instinctively, she replied. He handed Makoto a fake admission letter. Of course he's too ashamed to stay and ran off to hide. At this, she began weeping again. It's all George's fault. If he had just given the real admission letter to Makoto, none of this would have happened. He's the elder brother. How could he not yield to his younger brother? We have to find him quickly and make him hand the real admission letter over to Makoto. The more Sophia listened, the colder her heart became. This was George's biological mother, yet her heart and eyes were filled with only Makoto. There wasn't even the faintest trace of concern for George. She had never noticed anything wrong before. On the contrary, she had even stood on their side, persuading George. She had been gravely mistaken. Sophia's voice turned cold, like it had been tempered in ice. George has already taken the admission letter and gone to register. He may never come back. Mother's eyes widened in disbelief, her tone urgent. If he's gone to university, then what about Makoto? He can't endure all the gossip. Just now he tried to throw himself into the river. If someone hadn't pulled him out in time, he would be dead. At the mention of Makoto's suicide attempt, Sophia's expression softened slightly. After all, he was a younger brother she had genuinely cared for. How could she just stand by and watch him die? Clutching the marriage certificate tightly, she said firmly, George wrote Makoto's name on the marriage certificate. That means Makoto and I can temporarily act as a married couple. With me here, no one will dare gossip about him. When the storm passes, I'll divorce Makoto. As for George, let him go to university. We shouldn't force him anymore. The image of Makoto, dripping wet, still haunted Mother's mind. She couldn't even think clearly about the marriage certificate or who truly had the right to attend university. What mattered now was shielding Makoto from rumors and keeping him from attempting suicide again. Mother agreed hastily. On the way to the hospital, Sophia had already made up her mind. Once Makoto's emotions were stabilized, she would immediately set out for City A to find George and admit her mistakes. From now on, she would never care too much for Makoto again, she thought. With nearly 20 years of shared history between them, George wouldn't just let go so easily. But when they arrived at the hospital room, Father was downstairs paying fees. Inside, only Makoto lay on the bed, with a few friends visiting him. Just as Sophia reached to push the door open, she froze. Makoto's voice drifted out, sharp and venomous, completely unlike someone weakened by nearly drowning. That bastard George, how dare he trick me with a fake admission letter? What will you do then? Doesn't that mean you can't go to university? Ha, of course I have other ways. Didn't you see? All I had to do was pretend to jump into the river. And those two idiot parents of his panicked immediately. They'll definitely get me a spot at university. And not just the university. Even Sophia, I'll snatch her too. Everything George has should belong to me. I'll make sure he ends up with nothing. Chapter 10. With a loud crash, it was as if Sophia and Mother had been struck by lightning. What did this mean? Makoto's suicide had been staged, and what about before? The missing pocket watch, George being slandered, were those also schemes of Makoto's own making? All of it, just to seize everything that belonged to George. Inside, the conversation went on. George is still their biological son. What if they refuse? Makoto sneered, his voice colder than they had ever heard. So what if he's their blood? After all these years of my carefully planned traps, George already holds no place in their hearts. To them, I am no different from a real son. Even Sophia, the childhood fiancée who grew up alongside him, she stands by me now. But that's still not enough. I want them all to give up on George completely, so that in their hearts, the only one they see is, bang. Sophia couldn't listen any longer. She kicked the door wide open, eyes blazing as they fixed on the smug men inside. Makoto had been chatting merrily with his friends, never expecting Sophia and Mother to burst in. Panic flickered across his face, but he quickly forced on a smile. Sophia, Mom, what are you doing here? Mother stormed forward and slapped him hard across the face, her whole body trembling with rage. Our Wang family raised you from childhood. How have we wronged you, for you to hurt my son like this? Since the day Makoto was adopted, father and mother had been terrified of failing their late comrade's dying wish. They had treated him better than they treated George. Every toy, every snack went to him first. At night, when they worried he couldn't sleep in a strange bed, mother forced George to sleep alone while she stayed by Makoto's side, telling him bedtime stories. Even neighbors sometimes joked that they favored Makoto more than their own flesh and blood. Mother knew in her heart, they had never shortchanged their biological son. If anything, they had spoiled Makoto more. Yet this was the ungrateful wolf they had raised. Scheming, sowing discord, dumping filth on George's name. The memories piled up one by one until Mother lost control, landing another slap on his face. You ungrateful wretch, I regret ever bringing you into this family. The Wang family has no son like you. Makoto's cheeks swelled, twin red handprints stark against his skin, but he ignored the pain, sobbing and trying to defend himself. Mom, you misheard. I was only joking with my friends. He looked around desperately, hoping someone would back him up, but his friends, seeing trouble, had already slipped away, leaving only the three of them behind. Faced with their burning fury, Makoto's panic deepened. He grabbed Sophia's sleeve, voice trembling as he pleaded. Sophia, I didn't mean it. I was just so insecure, afraid that Mom and Dad wouldn't want me. You've watched me grow up, you understand me, don't you? Please, help me convince them to forgive me. I'll apologize to George. I swear I will. Before he could finish, Sophia yanked her arm free and shoved him to the ground with a thud. Her fists clenched so tightly they cracked, her whole body radiating a chill sharp as ice. Makoto, you will pay for every wrong you've done. Makoto knelt on the floor, weeping and begging for forgiveness, but they remained unmoved. Now, endless regret surged in Mother's and Sophia's hearts. For the sake of this cunning, poisonous man, they had driven George away. When Makoto realized that no amount of pleading could sway them, his mask finally tore away. He pointed at them and screamed, "Yes, I'm jealous. I'm jealous George had a real family and a childhood sweetheart. Why should he be so lucky while I had to live under someone else's roof? So what if I shed a few tears and spun some lies? You're the ones who chose to believe me. You're the ones who forced George away. It wasn't me." His words hit Sophia and Mother like a slap across the face. Yes, they were the ones truly guilty of driving George away. Sophia remembered what Teacher Mao had said, her fists tightening. She had to go to City A and find George. She didn't hesitate anymore. She strode out of the ward. At the doorway, she nearly collided with Father. His eyes were bloodshot, his face lined with grief. He had returned long ago, and had heard everything outside. In an instant, the once proud soldier seemed 20 years older. His back stooped with shame. He looked at Sophia, guilt and regret etched in every line of his face. Sophia, where is George studying? Will he ever come back? Behind him, Mother's eyes brimmed with desperate hope as she, too, looked at her. Sophia turned her gaze northward, her voice steady. He will. I will find him and bring him back. Chapter 11. Inside a lecture hall at Peking University, I lifted my head from the pile of books, rubbing my sore neck. It had been almost a month since classes started, and I had fully adapted to the rhythm of university life. Reborn. I finally stepped into the campus of my long-dreamed-of Peking University. Of course, I wouldn't waste this chance. Beyond my classes, nearly all my free time was devoted to the library, soaking up knowledge like a parched sponge. Diplomacy, that was my dream, and in this life, I would never hand it over to anyone else. Closing my book, I tidied the desk and prepared to leave. By habit, I would head to the track next. After all, the body was the foundation of the revolution. Just as I stepped out of the library, a voice called from behind me. "Freshman, you forgot your student ID." Puzzled if they were calling me, I turned, only to see a radiant smile. "Nice to see you again, Junior." It was her, the girl from the neighboring school of nuclear engineering. Willow. My heart jolted. The first time I met her was on registration day, when I couldn't find my dorm. She kindly led me there, explaining the campus layout along the way. Even then, I thought she was like sunlight, bright and warm. "Senior, what a coincidence." I accepted my student ID with a touch of surprise, but she just smiled. "Not really a coincidence. I've noticed you often study in this spot at the library. When I saw your ID fall, I thought I'd return it to you." I hugged my books a little tighter, instinctively putting on a polite smile. "Thank you, Senior, I still have class, so I'll be off. Seeing how guarded I looked, she blinked, then laughed cheerfully. Junior, what are you so nervous for? I'm not a bad person. As it turned out, she had come to ask me for help. Our project needs someone to translate foreign academic papers. Since your foreign languages are strong, I wondered if you'd be willing. Hearing that, I secretly exhaled in relief, yet at the same time, an uncontrollable flush crept to my cheeks. So she noticed me, because of something real. Clearing my throat, I tried to cover my embarrassment. Of course, senior, though I'm only a freshman, I might not be skilled enough. Don't worry, she interrupted with another smile. Translation needs patience and attention to detail. You can sit in the library for hours on end. I believe you can do it. Her words struck right at my heart. For a student of foreign languages, practice was essential, and her encouragement that growth came through practice felt tailored just for me. Senior, I'll do it, I replied with solemn resolve. From that day on, aside from classes, I practically lived in their lab, translating papers, checking dictionaries, comparing previous translations. I gave my all to every detail, because I knew this wasn't just work. It was my first step toward the future I longed for. As the project advanced, Willow and I grew closer without realizing it. One evening, after I translated the last phrase, I stretched my aching shoulders. Willow leaned over with a secretive smile. Junior, how about I take you out for hot pot tonight? I froze for a moment, but a light flared in my heart. Hot pot? In this strange, lonely city, the word itself felt warmer than anything. My eyes lit up, and before I could stop myself, I blurted out, yes. For nearly 3 months since arriving in City A, I'd spent my days shuttling between classrooms and the lab. Meals were mostly rushed bites in the cafeteria. My stomach had long since begun to protest. That night, Willow led me through twisting streets until we stopped in front of a modest-looking shop. Don't mind the small place. The flavor's authentic, you'll see. Skeptical, I picked up a slice of lamb, dipped it in sesame sauce, and took a bite. In an instant, warmth surged from my taste buds straight into my chest. My eyes lit up all over again. After so long without a proper meal, the satisfaction was enough to make my whole body feel light. Watching me devour the food, Willow's eyes glimmered with a quiet smile. She said nothing, yet her silence spoke volumes. As we ate and chatted, I learned more. She was a native of City A. Both her parents were researchers, and she had grown up steeped in science before choosing nuclear engineering herself. And me, a man who had lived twice, carrying secrets no one else knew. For the first time, I felt there was someone willing to sit across from me and truly listen. That meal filled more than my stomach. It filled something hollow in my heart. With my belly warm and round, even the fatigue of long days in the lab seemed to vanish. Back at campus, we walked side by side until we reached her dorm. Willow smiled softly. Rest well tonight. Tomorrow, we'll work together again. I nodded, a strange reluctance rising in me. Just ending the day with such laughter, it already felt precious. I was about to say goodbye when a voice sounded behind me, familiar enough to make my steps freeze. George. My heart clenched tight. Chapter 12. After finding out that George had been admitted to Peking University, Sophia immediately bought a ticket for the earliest train to City A. But just as the train was about to depart, she was called away for an urgent mission, forcing her to leave in another direction. Only after 2 months, once her mission was completed, did she finally rush to board a train bound for City A. On the train, she imagined George's possible reactions. Maybe he would turn coldly away. Maybe he would pretend not to see her. But it didn't matter. As long as she could see him again, that was enough. What she hadn't expected was that, when they finally met again, there was another woman at his side, a woman who laughed and chatted with him so easily. Sophia's gaze flickered with complicated emotions as she forced herself not to look at the girl beside him. George, I finally found you. I never imagined the next time I would hear that long-lost voice. It would be here, beneath Willow's dormitory. Sophia stood a few steps away, her eyes burning into me, filled with turmoil and regret. But to me, those eyes no longer had anything to do with me. I looked at her calmly, as though she were nothing more than a stranger. What are you doing here? She froze, as if pierced by my indifference. Yet the very next moment, she forced down her emotions, her voice tinged with pleading. George, your parents and I, we know we were wrong. We shouldn't have favored Makoto, shouldn't have ignored you. She went on and on about what had happened after I left, Makoto tearing off his mask, shamelessly clinging to the Wang family, my parents powerless to resist, and even herself, sacrificing her military promotion by trading her first-class merit to force through a divorce. I listened quietly, but inside, I felt no ripple. Those were her choices, her consequences. They had nothing to do with me. From the moment I boarded the train to City A, there had only been one thought in my heart: to study hard, and to become an outstanding diplomat. As for everyone else, and everything else, they no longer concerned me. Seeing me unmoved, her expression grew more desperate. She even reached out, trying to grab me. George, can you come back with me to register our marriage? Don't worry, I'll support your studies. Once the certificate is complete, I can transfer to City A as a military spouse and stay by your side." Before she could finish, Willow stepped forward, shielding me with her body. "Talk if you want to talk, but don't lay your hands on him." Her tone was calm, but carried an unshakable firmness. Sophia's face darkened instantly, her voice icy. "This is between me and my fiancé. It's none of your business." I immediately cut her off, stopping her absurd claim. "Fiancé? Who? We have nothing to do with each other anymore. At most, you're just my former fiancé." At those words, Willow's lips curved in a faint smile, sharp and cool. "Comrade, a woman of the new era should know how to let go. Clinging on after a breakup is hardly dignified behavior." Sophia's fists clenched tight, knuckles cracking. I knew her temper. Unless I made things absolutely clear, she would never stop. I gently signaled Willow to go on ahead. This was campus. She would be safe here. She gave me a look, clearly reluctant, but eventually walked away, glancing back with every step. Sophia mistook that look as hesitation on my part, as though I were softening. For a moment, a flicker of hope lit her eyes, but I crushed it without mercy. "Sophia, leave." I looked at her calmly, my voice as cold as ice. "My household registration has already been transferred to City A. For the rest of this life, I will never go back." Chapter 13. Sophia's face turned pale, her expression full of pain. "George, I've already had people keep Makoto under strict watch. He'll never again have the chance to harm you. I swear. Please believe me." I shook my head. "You still don't understand, do you? The one who hurt me was never Makoto. It was you, and my parents. It was your repeated blind trust in him that finally made me decide to leave all of you. I thought, if I gave up the chance to attend university as you all demanded, you would still gather around him, leaving me alone." Sophia protested anxiously. "How could that be? I truly wanted to marry you. How could I ever leave you alone? And besides, your parents, they're your biological parents. They could never abandon you." A bitter, mocking smile tugged at my lips. But all of this, I had already lived through once before. In my previous life, there's no need to say more. My decision will not change. Sophia refused to give up, her voice breaking as she pleaded. "George, when we were children, you promised me you would marry me." A flicker of scorn passed through my eyes. "And you promised me you would never let me be hurt. Yet for Makoto's sake, you threw me into the confinement room, left me to take the blame, and made me bear the scorn and humiliation of others." Sophia's body went rigid. The dead, hollow look in George's eyes resurfaced in her memory. Yes, she had once sworn to protect him, but what had she actually done? I no longer wished to argue with her. When I turned to leave, Sophia desperately tried to stop me. "What about your parents? Even if you can't forgive me, they gave you life, raised you. Are you really going to sever ties with them?" The moment the words left her lips, regret swept over her. She had seen, with her own eyes, how his parents had treated him all these years, but words once spoken could never be taken back. My expression didn't waver in the slightest. "I will fulfill my duty of filial support. Every month, I'll send them money. Beyond that, nothing." I paused, fixing her with a steady gaze. "I hope neither you, nor they, will ever come looking for me again. Your presence only disturbs me." With that, I turned and walked upstairs, not once looking back. Sophia stood frozen, watching my figure disappear from sight. In the end, she said nothing. She had failed to cherish him, had hurt him again and again. Now, what right did she have to beg for forgiveness? The next day after class, I went to the lab as usual. Willow was fully absorbed in her experiments, as though nothing had happened the night before. She didn't ask, didn't pry, just focused on her work. At lunch, I couldn't hold back any longer. After several glances in her direction, I finally spoke. "Senior, aren't you curious about what happened last night?" She looked up, smiling as she reached out to ruffle my hair. "That's your private matter. If you want to tell me, you will. Besides, I can already guess. They're unpleasant memories, aren't they? I don't want to make you relive them. For you, that would only be another wound." Then, rare for her, she grew serious. "George, no matter what your past was, I only know this, your future will be as an outstanding diplomat." I froze for a moment, then all at once, the heavy weight pressing on my chest dissolved into nothing. My eyes burned, but I nodded firmly. "Yes, I will be." Perhaps too ashamed to face me again. From that day onward, I never saw Sophia's figure again. The days that followed, I buried myself in my studies, eagerly taking part in all sorts of diplomatic activities, each step firmer than the last. 4 years later, I graduated with honors, standing among the top of my class, and entered the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The first time I stood at the podium of the Foreign Ministry, beneath the blinding flash of cameras and the expectant gaze of the nation, I finally fulfilled the dream of 2 lifetimes. In that moment, my heart was utterly calm. All the past grievances and pain had long since become part of the path beneath my feet. I heard later that, far away in City C, my parents and Sophia sat before the television, watching as I appeared on the screen. I don't know what they felt, guilt, regret, perhaps both, but for me, it no longer mattered. All I wanted was to continue forward, walking a road that truly belonged to George.